In a pure build, there are two big problems with Dark Magician decks. First, it is somewhat slow to start, in that its first turn largely consists of setup, searching for a circle, and then a means to summon a Dark Magician during the opponent's turn either through soul or navigation in order to trigger that circle. With little in the form of overall field presence during the first turn, basically just a normal summoned monster is typically all the player produces. Second, if a player cannot get to circle, or the opponent gets rid of it in some way, the deck loses a major power play. Obviously, a third smaller problem is it tends to get bricky hands more than the average deck. Interestingly enough, since last discussing the Dark Magician archetype, it has received a significant indirect boost with the release of the Wind Witch engine. Note, I use the term engine because calling Wind Witch an archetype at the moment is kind of a stretch. The arrival of Wind Witches provide a nice secondary engine to reduce the detriment of the first problem, and provide an alternative threat if Circle is not on the field. First, Wind Witches can provide something of a field with a crystal wing that cannot be destroyed by opponent card effect and largely is immune to battle, for that is definitely meaningful field presence even if it's just a single monster. Also, because all of this happens without using your normal summons, you can still get that normal summoned rod to help make your Dark Magician based plays. Second, the tuner options provided by Wind Witches create additional avenues for playmaking beyond reliance on Circle and Soul. In addition, the spellcaster typing of Wind Witch opens the door to running Wonder Wand more consistently, similar to Invoked Wind Witch, increasing the speed of the deck and allowing the deck, if desired, to move away from the more risky Allure of Darkness or Pot of Desire draw speed strategy. Therefore, the deck runs a Wind Witch engine consisting of 3 copies of Ice Bell, 2 copies of Glass Bell, and 2 copies of Snow Bell. For the Dark Magician monsters, I run the standard 3 copies of Dark Magician and 3 copies of Rod. Similar to my first deck discussion, I still only run 1 copy of Magician of Dark Illusion, because overall the monster is just too restrictive, in my opinion, with regards to overall consistency in a deck that, as mentioned, does have a tendency to brick more often than the average deck. Magician of Dark Illusion only takes the Dark Magician name when it's on the field, not when in the hand or in the graveyard, and it only special summons itself when you activate a spell or trap during the opponent's turn, not when the opponent activates a spell or trap during the opponent's turn. An annoying oversight. The remaining monsters not Dark Magician or Wind Witch based are largely centered around producing advantage in a break-even position or off of a navigation activation. The Timebreaker can break boards and remove problem monsters. The Snow does the standard Book of Moon snow things. The Ghost Destroyer neutralizes graveyard banishment and does some banishing itself. The Chocolate Magician Girl helps with some basic attack stalling and some draw power. And the Glow-Up Bulb produces additional Synchro versatility, including the possibility to make a Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss due to its graveyard effect. There's not much surprising about the spells. The only real major change is 3 copies of Wonder Wand are swapped in, replacing 3 copies of Allure of Darkness from the first build, because the number of proper targets for the Allures have significantly dropped. For the Wind Witches are wind, and the Wind Witch's entry did require the removal of a number of other dark monsters I ran to try to create field presence in the first build, so there are fewer Allure of Darkness targets. In my opinion, banishing a Dark Magician or a Rod early game with an Allure can be rather dicey as well, so once again the Wonder Wand seemed to be a better fit. I have the almost mandatory 3 copies of Circle, in addition to 1 Upstart for drawing, 1 Raigeki for destruction, 1 Instant Fusion for Norden, 1 Dark Magic attack for back row destruction, you'll largely be searching it with Eternal Soul, and 1 Summoner Art for Dark Magician searching. Finally, I run 1 copy of Illusion Magic, for it works nicely as a one-of, it tends to get cloggy and inefficient in multiples. Thankfully, it is also searchable by Circle and Rod. In the past build, I ran 1 copy of Aya Timaeus, but with the change in the meta, the card has simply become too ineffective against other more popular decks, most notably Zodiacs and Paleozoics. For the traps, I run the standard 3 copies of Eternal Soul, along with 1 copy of Solemn Warning, While others like running 3 copies of Navigation, I continue to choose to only run 2 copies because, as I stated before in the first deck build, one of the trickier elements of this deck is having Dark Magicians in the hand to actually activate the second and, if run, third copy of Navigation. For after the first activation, Dark Magicians in the hand become less probable. Navigation is dead without Dark Magician, so more copies also equals a greater chance to draw them without Magician in the hand, in addition to drawing Navigation when you do have Dark Magician in the hand. In a sense, it is a double-edged sword. If you run that third copy, hey, there's a higher probability I'll have Navigation when I have a Dark Magician, but there's also a higher probability that I'll have a Navigation when I don't have a Dark Magician. Overall, in my mind, Navigation is not so critical for the deck that it needs to be run at 3 copies. Finally, I run 3 copies of Lost Wind for attack reduction and monster negation, as those Dryden's and Infernoid Petrulias can certainly make mincemeat of your circles and souls. In addition, the attack reduction certainly helps this deck, for Dark Magician's only at 2500 attack unless he has a Wonder Wand, and 2500 attack doesn't kill a lot of boss monsters these days. On a final note, some interesting 1-copy cards that could be run in this deck over some of my 1-copy choices are, when released, Black Fang Magician due to its Dark Spellcaster Revival effect, Spygal Misty due to her Draw effect and Information Reveal, Gaga Magician to extend rank 7 playmaking with only a single Dark Magician special summoned via a Navigation or Eternal Soul. For the extra deck, I run 1 copy of Elder Entity Norden, 1 copy of Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss, 1 copy of Trishula Dragon of the Ice Barrier, 2 copies of Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, 1 copy Scarlight Red Dragon Archfiend, 1 copy of Crimson Blader, with Dinosaurs, True Dracos, and True Kings Oh My. For decks that can make Crimson Blader, one should see a fairly strong resurgence of his presence. 1 PSY-Framelord Omega, 1 Stardust Dragon, nice protection for your Eternal Souls, another option that can be made off of the Wind Witches, 1 Clearwing Synchro Dragon, 1 Wind Witch Winterbell, 1 Ally of Justice Catastor. You don't see a lot of dark monsters in the meta these days, so Catastor's effect has also seemingly received an inherent boost. 1 Red Eyes Flare Metal Dragon, 1 Ebon Illusion Magician, 1 Castel the Skyblaster Musketeer. In the end, the addition of the Wind Witch engine does an excellent job of covering for the weaknesses of the Dark Magician deck, but can only do so much, for Dark Magician still struggles with its own power plays, largely due to its dependency on Circle, Soul, and smaller extent Navigation, which hurts it in a competitive environment where there is so much quick play face-up card removal. Also, Circle only being once per turn is definitely fair, but somewhat annoying for the deck as well. Overall, Dark Magicians can be explosive, but certainly can also be bogged down in some bricky hands as well. Well, that is my updated Dark Magician deck. Thank you for your attention and your time. I'm out.